Hi, everyone. Franklin Media TV reporting on a very, very interesting article from NPR in regards to Chinese hacking and cyber theft. This article is long, so I'm going to try and dissect it for you guys here, but the 30,000-foot overview is that the Chinese have been hacking U.S. businesses for years, uh, and not under their noses, but right in front of their faces. And the U.S. businesses turned a blind eye and did nothing, left it unreported for short term profit gains. It's incredible. This article is incredible. And let me just kind of bring it to your attention, break it down for you, and dissect it if I could. I'm going to just kind of skip around a little bit here because there's a ton of information, like I said, but I'll bring you the points I think are the most important. So, technology theft and unfair business practices originated from China are costing the American economy more than $57 billion a year, a White House official believes, and they expect that figure to grow. Now, an investigation by NPR and Frontline, which is a PBS television show. I suggest you guys watch it if you get the opportunity. It's a very great show and it's very unbiased in my opinion. And what they're reporting is that three successive presidential administrations failed to stop cyber hacking from China. And yeah, what they found was an unlikely obstacle for the government: the victims themselves. So, in dozens of interviews with the US government and business representatives, officials involved in commerce with China said hacking and theft were an open secret for almost 20 years. Um, and they allowed it to continue because US companies had too much money at stake to to really make any waves or report any of this information to the public. So they let it happen. These companies let their systems get hacked, their information gets stolen. They knew about it and let it happen and left it unreported because they didn't want their stock price to go down. Now, if this doesn't enrage you guys, I don't know what will. This is terrible. Let's continue here. Okay, just kind of going through some of this. Of course, the Chinese government, yeah, they officially denied to NPR and Frontline that they've been involved in such practices. We all know that's a lie, of course. That's just a stamp they're going to put on everything and just say, hey, yeah, we didn't do this. So this is where it gets interesting. So a former U.S. attorney, David Hickton, found that when he took over the Western District of Pennsylvania in 2010, he says he was inundated with calls from companies saying they suspected China might be inside their computers. Now that's 2010. That's 9 years ago, guys. He said, I literally received an avalanche of concern and complaints from companies and organizations who said we're losing our technology. And this David Hickton opened an investigation, quickly set his sights on a special unit of the Chinese military, a secretive group known as Unit 61398. Investigators were able to watch as the unit's officers, sitting in an office building in Shanghai, broke into the computer systems of American companies at night, stopped for an hour break at the Chinese lunchtime, and then continued in the Chinese afternoon, essentially overnight here. And they were using a really large rake, as he described it. Think of a rake like you would rake leaves in the fall, he says. They were taking everything: personal information, strategic plans, organizational charts. They just took all the information and they would sift through it later and figure out how they were going to use it. But when Hickton went to the companies, eager for them to become plaintiffs, he ran into a problem. None of these companies wanted any part of it. He said they had too much money on the line in China. So they were so afraid of losing uh, their business practices in China or being allowed to sell into the Chinese market that they just let it happen. It was kind of a cost of doing business. So these companies figured, hey, you know, China's allowing us access to their markets, but they're going to take all our information on the back end of it. So it's kind of a, again, a cost of doing business. We'll just let them take everything, but we'll be allowed to sell into their markets. This is incredible, guys. I suggest you go to npr.org, look up this article, and read it in its entirety because it's amazing what's going on here. And these companies, they were tone deaf. They seemed to think they could just walk in, wave the flag of the USA, and it just didn't work. He said 5 years later, Hickton said he won't name most of the companies involved, and they just never came forward. Eventually, he said he was able to convince 5 large local companies and the Steelworkers Union to come forward, mostly because he grew up in Pittsburgh and he went to school with a lot of the managers there. So it was only due to the fact that this U.S. attorney had personal relationships with some of the managers at these companies was the only reason they came forward. They trusted him. But he said there could be hundreds or thousands more companies that this is happening to that are just keeping quiet about it. He said government business leaders interviewed by NPR and Frontline said individual companies were making millions of dollars in China over the past decade and a half and didn't want to hurt short-term profits by coming forward. They demanded secrecy, even in the face of outright theft. So, yeah, that's kind of boils down to the whole crux of the article here is that all these companies, hundreds, thousands of companies, were getting their thefts, their data stolen. Everything from, again, organizational charts to employee lists, engineering designs, all getting taken, and they just kept quiet about it because they were more interested in short-term profits. It's unbelievable. Oh, this is a good one here. So Michael Wetzel, commissioner of the U.S. government, U.S.-China's Economic Security Review Commission, says it wasn't supposed to be this way, that U.S. officials had high hopes when China officially joined the World Trade Organization in 2001. There's a honeymoon period in the first 6 or 7 years, a desire to try and make things work. But he says starting around 2006, businesses began coming to him saying that China had stolen their designs or ideas or had pressured them into partnerships and taken their technology. Just like with Hickton, Wessel said they wouldn't come forward publicly. The business community wanted the administration to come in hard without anyone's fingerprints being on the reasoning behind it. They wanted the profits, but also didn't want the possible retribution. And hackers from China, often with ties to the government, had been accused of breaking into gas companies, steel companies, chemical companies. And not long ago, Chinese government companies were indicted for stealing the secret chemical makeup color of white from DuPont. China developed its J-20 fighter plane, a similar plane to the Lockheed Martin F-22 Raptor, shortly after Chinese nationals were indicted for stealing technical data from Lockheed Martin. So this runs deep, guys, all the way to the military. Anyway, guys, you could see this article is very long. It's got a lot of information, but it's a treasure trove of information. Now, apparently, um, the only one to come forward about this was Google. So Google and about 35 other companies knew that they were getting hacked, and Google went to these other 35 companies um, asking for support on this, and no one else would come forward. The only company that actually came forward with this information was Google, and they couldn't believe that these other companies just wanted to keep quiet about this. It was they were amazed by it. So that's how deep this runs, how bad the problem is. China stole, you know, treasure troves of U.S. information and technology and data and engineering and years of hard work. Took it all, used what they could, probably discarded the rest, and it's still going on today. But the interesting thing is here that the U.S. companies are hiding it. They're hiding it for short-term profits. It's just boggles my mind. If this continues to happen, we will no doubt hand over the crown as the number one world economy to China in the coming years. If they allow this to continue to happen, it's so short-sighted. I can't even believe it, guys. Check this article out. I beg you. NPR.org. Thanks for watching Franklin Media TV.